Everybody else's highlight reel is all in front of you. If you're on social media, if it's not on social media, it's when you're at the grocery store. If you get into a comparison with other human beings that have completely different storylines, experiences, strengths and weaknesses, it doesn't matter. What matters is this existence that you've been given, and how are you competing with everything you can get out of that human being that's looking you back in the mirror.
Welcome to the Success Flow Podcast, where our mission is simple: to be better each day and relay our findings with other relentless humans defining success for themselves. If that sounds like you, let's begin.
All right, back at it on the Success Flow Podcast. And we're diving in on a topic today that might get some people riled up, but it's, whether you like it or not, it is a part of each and everyone's journey to success. And today we are going to be broaching the topic of competition.
I love it. Great topic. Obviously, both you and I are sports nuts. We grew up playing sports. We competed in athletics growing up, but now as what we call business athletes, competing in business and in life. I think it's a great topic. What did you want to talk about? Kick us off.
Yeah, I think we got multiple levels to this, right? Because this business athlete has become a theme of the show. It's landing, so we're going to hear a lot more about it. It's a really holistic mindset, right? It's everything that we're doing day in and day out, and competition is evident everywhere. Whether it is in finding a mate, getting through school. Think about the college process, like in the middle of our lives. But if you take it all the way back, whether we like it or not, this is a very triggering topic for many people, especially when you need the political landscape. But survival of the fittest was Charles Darwin's original theory. And I argue that we are entering a different time that we're going to get to later in this podcast, that technology has really changed how survival of the fittest works. And there's a much more level playing field in regard to resource scarcity, which is a big part of competition. We're fighting for resources. So if you go back to just the foundations of our evolution, survival of the fittest and resource scarcity and adapting to your environment is how we got here. You have a lineage of ancestors that competed, that fought nature, that fought other human beings to survive, to give you this place on the planet, which brings us back to gratitude. I've gone really deep down that rabbit hole of thinking about how many people had to survive to get me to this point and to the comfort that I live in right now and have this conversation with you. And I think no matter how you cut it, you cannot disregard that was a thing and is what got us to here now.
Yeah, that's wild when you truly think about how far back all the chain of events that had to happen for you to sit and be in the spot that you're at right now. All the pivotal moments in not only your life, but the pivotal moments in all of your ancestors' lives that made that happen. And it's hard for me to think about a lot because it blows. It's almost like I can't even understand that, right? Like if one thing potentially went the wrong way, or maybe there was a battle way back when, hundreds of years ago, and your great grandfather didn't win that battle, you wouldn't be here in the same light. It's just crazy to think about that. And I'm glad you brought that up. And it's funny when you first said competition for a mate, the first thing I thought of was peacocking. Like when the birds or the animals out in the wild, when they're out there peacocking like a peacock, right? Trying to look pretty for trying to get the female. There's definitely a level of competition when you're single and trying to vie for the relationship that you want against others. But it just makes me think of peacocking when you say like, hey, I'm in competition to find a mate or a relationship. But it's true, right? You want to put your best foot forward. And it's just like anything with competition. It takes confidence and it takes preparation. And it's something that you have to, innately as human beings, we're competitors, whether you look at it that way or not. And some of us are very heavy into competition, which I think we'll probably touch on the downsides of that. But in a nutshell, healthy competition is great. And I do see, if anyone is listening right now and you're watching us on YouTube or Spotify, right now it's OppoFlow versus Focus Acti Group. We got the gray versus the blue. This is the lines have been drawn right up the middle of this video. So it's on, brother.
Competition for bamboo bangers is on.
Exactly.
You mentioned, it's funny because we don't have really a plan on these conversations a whole lot. And you just took me to, thought we might wait a little bit to jump into business, but to draw that line with peacocking in the animal kingdom to business, that's really when you're talking about marketing and branding.
Yeah.
And right now, with all of the attention that our eyes are on in media, on your phones, all of these brands and businesses are peacocking to try to get your attention and find a mate. So it's interesting when I think about competition and being in the SaaS industry for so long. It's huge on how you can get a conversation started. And so we can kind of go down that rabbit hole because you've seen it in corporate America at the highest levels and largest businesses, and you also seen it in the small business industry. So talk a little bit about that in regard to competition and the impact of branding, marketing, and peacocking.
Yeah, I mean, it's true. We're all vying for attention, and that's so. Just talking about the social media side, and not so much with the payroll business I have, but with OppoFlow and the content creation, all that stuff that you and I are putting out there. Even just this podcast, we've got how many thousands of podcasts out there, millions of podcasts out there, and we're in competition, if you will, to vie for people's ears and hopefully providing value. And so if we believe that we provide a lot of value, how do you get those listeners to jump on and listen? You have to put your best foot forward and peacock. You have to market. And in order to do that, you're not selling anything. You're selling the idea that there's value in return. But I think from a large scale enterprise level, I do think it's a little bit different. I think it's harder to personal brand yourself when you're in an industry. So, like, for example, when I was with ADP, I was selling a payroll tax software to large enterprise companies, payroll providers. Being Master Tax was the name of the company. They did a lot of that marketing, and maybe self-branding wasn't a huge deal back then. But it wasn't as much, it was more as a company brand. Here's the value that we can provide, and here's why we're different than our competitors. I think in the small business space, it's a lot more fun because you have the opportunity to self-brand yourself as your business, whether you're a cookie shop or maybe you're in merchant services, you're doing credit card processing, or you're in insurance. Those are all big industries, but you can be the face of your business as a small business owner or even as an employee of a small business and be like, I am the baker of Phoenix, and this is why. And I think that you put your best forward and it's done through self-branding as opposed to company branding. I think people follow people versus people follow companies these days. And so I do think you need to be out there and providing value, but it's you as the person providing value as the face of that organization. So another example, Jason Payne, who we had on the podcast, he's State 48 Roofing. Everyone knows him as the roofer, but everyone on his team has their own identity within State 48 Roofing. You have like the bearded roofer, you have the redheaded roofer, and so they're out there portraying themselves to help bring business and awareness to State 48 Roofing. But they are also self-branding themselves and peacocking out there. And that's what makes them different, right? And so when each individual person has that ability to go out there and bring that awareness as an individual, that brings more business and revenue and drives awareness to what it is that you're trying to do. I had one of our payroll specialists, I know I'm going a little bit of a jumping around, but one of our payroll specialists on Facebook was like, she got a gift from a client. It was flowers at year end. And this is our busiest time of the year and we're slammed. And she goes, this was a beautiful bouquet from one of our clients. I guess I really am a payroll gangster. And like, it was just cool to see like her taking on that identity of like, and she really is. She's an amazing, she treats clients at an amazing level. The relationships she built with clients is unbelievable. And so she's branding herself as that payroll gangster. And I think that's really cool that she's bought into that.
That is awesome. And I'm going to push back on you on the large corporation and the personal branding because you're bang on the fact that the market and your potential customers may not. It is more difficult to have a personal brand there, though you should have it. But internally in organizations like that, your personal brand is what keeps the competition of an ecosystem alive. And whether you like it or not, hopefully this is where we're talking about cooperative competition within the workplace. But we're all holding ourselves to standards at KPIs, metrics, booking numbers that is there, and you are competing in a cooperative environment, and hopefully, steel sharpening steel in that sense of competition. But your personal brand internally is what helps you get things done in a complex environment today with communication being at a top value. Your ability to have those intangible skills of communication and cooperability to work with while still maintaining, the line on what you have to get done, all becomes your personal brand in a corporate environment, and there are levels to competition, and has to be top of mind there as well for all our folks that are in the corporate environment.
Yeah, it's 100%. I mean, you nailed it, right? Because it's the entrepreneurship mindset and it's the team. A lot of competition doesn't mean that they're, I think in sports, it's easy to say, here's the line in the sand and I'm competing against you and one of us will win. And then maybe after the match, we go grab a beer or whatever. And it's a friendly competition. But when you're in the corporate world and you've got a team and you're on the same team as like 8, 10, 12 salespeople, or you're on the same back end operations team, your personal brand, are you accountable? Are you loyal? Are you the person that's going to show up when you say you will? Are you the one that's going to do what you say you're going to do? Are you able to have each other's backs? And that is a personal brand within the organization. And so there's two levels. There's the external of how do you bring awareness to the work that you're doing? And then there's internal, how do you build the reputation that you want to have as the business athlete within your organization?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And when you're talking about that competition, one of the concepts that came to mind for me, and this is macro and down to the business micro, is arms races. So arms races, I think a lot of people's minds go to the Cold War. Anybody that's just watched Oppenheimer, that what happened to end World War II in Hiroshima and Nagasaki kicked off. The biggest thing was not that you ended World War II, but you started an arms race with Russia, which went on for decades. And so that didn't start there either. An arms race in the past was who could get access. You go back to building fire, building better shelters, weapons going from a stick sling to a shot put, all the way up to the Western the Western wars, where you were going guns versus bow and arrows. These arms races have always been a huge part of competition, and that's technology advancement. And now that same concept applies to business in regard to human capital. It's an arms race. You're trying to get the best minds and characters on your team to get the mission that you are on achieved, to build the best technology, to be the best service provider. That's the new arms race between technology and humans. And back to one of my favorite quotes, we have primal brains, medieval institutions, and godlike technology. And it's a dangerous combination that we're really trying to figure out right now. And AI is really, really coming to light, bringing that to light, and has everyone's minds thinking differently.
Yeah, it totally does. And you bring up a really good point about recruitment. We actively go through that, and turnover is just a real challenge as any entrepreneur or any team leader, right? When you're trying to build out the strongest team. But you have to be, when it comes to competition, as an organization, as a team, you're trying to be the best you possibly can be. But to find the right people, you have to find the right people that are the ones that are self-motivated, the ones that have competitions within themselves, and to a healthy level. Not, there's definitely some negatives to, too much competition with yourself, but you have to find those people that are self-motivated, the ones that can hold themselves accountable, because it's not easy as a leader. You can hold accountability for your team, but it only goes so far. If that person that you bring on your team doesn't have the ability to recognize what needs to get done and recognize that there's things that need to be fixed and to just do them and then tell leaders about it later, that's the perfect person to have on your team, as opposed to the one that's waiting for you to tell them what to do. Right. And say, hey, I think if we did this, took this approach, I think this would be like, there's a brainstorm session. But when you have someone on your team that's a self-motivator in competition with themselves to be the best version of themselves at all times, daily, weekly, monthly, or whatever, they're going to find those gaps. They're going to find those issues, and they're going to just go in and fix it themselves. And then it's going to make the team better. It's going to make the organization better. And it's going to make that person feel stronger and more confident and higher self-esteem, because they're able to just go in and challenge themselves on purpose and get it done. And so I think when you talk about competition, bringing it back to internal, there's a lot of pros and cons. I think pros outweigh the cons, but I think the cons are when you are put too much pressure on yourself, and all of a sudden anxiety and depression comes in because you're not winning all the time, because your goals are way too high. They're not achievable at all. I'm an advocate for shooting for the stars and you'll land on the moon. But at the same time, you've got to be okay and give yourself grace if you don't hit the stars because you landed on the moon. And so if you're the person that's shooting for the stars all the time and you won't be happy unless you hit the stars, I think that's when things can go awry and it causes issues in your personal life and your professional life.
Absolutely. And I think you take me to one of the, when you talk about that approach to problem solving and hitting these KPIs and goals that we're chasing relentlessly, it's the people that to hit those goals and to really come out on top in whatever competition you're in. I know it's been said by many people, but I know Phelps said the only way you're going to be able to end in those, small percentages is you're going to have to do what other people aren't willing to do. It just, there is no silver bullet. And that's coming from, I was looking for those silver bullets in my 20s. I was like, what's the shortcut? How do I get around this? And there's peace in finding out that it is a day-to-day finding those edges, continual improvement, watering the bamboo shoot that result in those big jumps. And when you hit pivotal turning points, when you're not the same individual, not the same competitor, that puts you in a different place when you're in the middle of these challenging situations.
Yeah, that's a bamboo banger. Whenever you bring up the bamboo shoot, I always think of our term here on this podcast. It's a bamboo banger, like that was a nugget that just really resonates with, I think, myself and a lot of people listening to this podcast. And it's, talking about quotes and athletes and, relentless. You mentioned that word in the book with Tim Grover and, Kobe and MJ and just the heights, Tom Brady's of the world and the Phelps and those guys that just, they all say the same thing: put in the work. Like it doesn't happen without putting in the work. And if you're competitive and you want these things in your life and you have this vision outlined, or you have some sort of path of where it is that you want to go, it may not be straight. It's never straight, but you have an idea of where it is you want to go. It's not going to just be given to you. It's not going to just happen. And you have to compete to continue moving forward, to compete with yesterday, right? What did I do yesterday and what can I do better today? How can I beat yesterday? How can I improve today? And I was having conversations with some people who have gotten to a level that they're happy with, right? They've got their families, their careers they're blowing it out of the water. Their businesses are thriving, and they're kind of like, well, what more do I have to grow? I'm just kind of like maintaining. And and I think everyone always has a level to grow, but it also made me think like, well, that may be true. Like they're happy, they're content, they're maintaining, but it's only temporary. If you're not continuing to work and sharpen up the sword, that stuff can go away. So I think there's a 1% improvement, right? There's a 1% improvement that James Clear talks about in Atomic Habits all the time, the ice cube story, where if I change the temperature in this room, it'll change the structure of this ice cube. And so I think there's definitely a lot of merit to improving every single day to get better and grow. But there is a point where that bamboo forest will be there for you. But that bamboo forest can easily catch fire and be gone if you don't continue to water, nurture, and hone in on your craft.
Absolutely. I have a couple people in mind when you just said that may come to mind. And I feel like, this podcast and us, like if someone's close in my inner circle, I'm always going to push on that. If you're only going one direction or the other, there is no kind of coasting. There's just not. When you're coasting, one little pebble will just throw you out of the. It really can fall quickly if you're not
Yeah.
always sharpening the sword, but also enjoying life as well, right? Like enjoying that process. Not saying that it has to be a constant war on yourself, but you got to keep sharpening the sword. That's what this podcast is all about.
Well, that's where those adventures come in, right? And that's
Yeah.
I think that's the part where it doesn't have to. It's not all work. Like you've got to find the time to take those adventures, whether it's a big, massive vacation or it's just a little adventure every day. Just setting up those and planning those adventures with yourself and also with those closest to you to eliminate the day-to-day distractions and just get a mindset refresh and reset to enjoy life because you built amazing things.
When I kind of kick this off, I talked about this maybe being a triggering topic, which I even hate saying triggering topic, but I said it. We're gonna keep rolling with it.
You said it.
What would you say? Because I've heard it so many times, whether it's around the board game table, maybe some people are more into the arts and which I would argue is just as competitive with yourself, which I'm sure we're going to talk about in a few seconds here. But what would you say to the individuals besides talking about the evolution of how they got there and every one of their ancestors were competitors? What would you say to the individual that says, oh, I'm not that competitive? I'm not, I don't really enjoy competition, or I'm scared of competition?
I would say, well, you're waking up every day and you're going to work or you're doing whatever it is that you're doing, right? You're competing at life because you're still here, right? And I think focusing on continuing to reach out and talk to the people closest to you will inevitably start turning the wheels of wanting to get better. And I think if you just open your mind up and be okay with new ideas and challenges and experiences, that will help you define your purpose. I think that's where it starts, is the person who's like, I'm not that competitive. I'm like, well, yeah, you are. Like if you've got your purpose defined, maybe you don't know where it is that you want to go. I think that's where it starts. And once you've got that defined, then you have to get there. So the only way to get there is to compete every day to make it happen. And so if your purpose is to just not do anything, then what's the point? It's like, remember that video? I think we mentioned it way early on in this podcast, was Gary Vee, when it was like, you won the lottery of life. We did a whole episode on it.
Oh yeah.
Like, how are you're a human being and you're not driven? Like, he's like, you suck. It's true. Right? Like, it's true. So I think the person who says I'm not competitive, okay, in a general sense, yeah, I don't care if I lose a board game. I don't care if I, lose here or whatever. It doesn't bother me. Or if I have a bet with somebody, rock, paper, scissors, that doesn't bother me. I think, for me, that doesn't bother me either. Like if it's out of my control, let it roll off my back and continue moving forward. Or if I don't succeed when I'm trying to do something, then I win or learn. Right. And I think that's okay. Right. And you're still competitive because you have drive and you have motivation and you have energy and you have purpose. So you're competing with your yesterday, as I go back to. So you are a competitor. As long as those are defined and you know what it is, where you want to go, that's all that matters, because that then by definition proves that you are a competitor because you're trying to get there.
Absolutely. And I think that's where I want to tie us out and get your thoughts on, at the end of the day, was a big reframe for me. Is in my 20s, like looking at the scoreboard and the sales rankings was everything. And I'm not going to lie, it still is. It's still there. And if it wasn't there, I probably wouldn't be in the right craft. But what I found solves everything is having a really good idea of what my standards are, what they were in increments ago, last quarter, last year, 5 years ago, and constantly raising, like you said, the ice cube, raising those standards. And you're in competition with not only your current self, acknowledging the competition you had with your past self, where you came from there, and then competing toward that ideal future vision of who I am. What is that person doing that I'm not doing now? That's the competition that I'm in now each and every day, because comparison is I think it's the thief of joy is the cliche term, but it's a cliche for a reason. And in this day and age, everybody else's highlight reel is all in front of you. If you're on social media, if it's not on social media, it's when you're at the grocery store. If you get into a comparison with other human beings that have completely different storylines, experiences, strengths, and weaknesses, it doesn't matter. What matters is this existence that you've been given, and how are you competing with everything you can get out of that human being that's looking you back in the mirror.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. So I'll put it back on you though. What I think one of the best ways you can compete with yourself is by challenging yourself on purpose. It's something I do quarterly is I find something that's just out of my comfort zone that I know I could probably do, and it probably would open the door for more opportunity and growth. So I say, all right, screw it. I'm going to make this happen. Whether it's professional or personal, what is something that you challenge yourself on or strive to be better at in a sense to be a competitor for moving forward in life?
Yeah, I would say it's not new for this year, but it's going up another level. And it's been, we talked about it a few times on this podcast, but jiu-jitsu has given me so much more, and I'm still so bad at it. And it's improved every aspect of my life. And so I took a few long breaks this year, and because it started with injury, and then I let the breaks go too long, and then going back was like starting over. So it's been a dance, and that's a huge goal for me going to this new year is consistency with that, and that's a part of the systems and processes themes I've talked about as well this year. And I was just talking about it with actually my direct manager, and we were talking about less rules, more discipline.
Yeah.
And we're setting constraints, and I see a lot of systems thinkers that have really resonated where I'm weak on some simple processes, right? Keeping it simple, not rules, but consistent processes, like things that have evolved over the last year that were processes that I didn't even realize came up, but intentionally building those and making sure that things are, there's an operating system. It's not just work extremely hard and take crazy action, which there's always been systems in places, but I'm going to really dial that in this year, and my jiu-jitsu game is going to skyrocket due to consistency. So
yeah, the athleticism, the sports aspect, I mean, that's very similar to the challenge that I did myself for Q4, which I got my half marathon race coming up in like very soon. By the time this episode's released, it might even be like coming up this week. And I think having the quarterly challenges, like the big ones like that, just keeps you in that competition mode. It keeps you on focusing on how I can get better every day. And it doesn't have to be, you by you focusing on jiu-jitsu will translate into what you're doing at Workiva, right? And that will translate in you having a massive year because we talk about working hard, but if you have the chaotic organization that I had, a few years ago and up until probably 18 months ago, it's like, man, I'm working so hard, but why isn't the needle moving? Why do I feel like I'm unhappy? And it's because there is no systems and processes, or there was no challenging myself on purpose in my personal life to translate that into my professional life. And so when you have those quarterly, they're not goals. It's almost like those challenges. It's like, I'm just going to challenge myself on doing this half marathon, and this is what I'm going to focus on, and everything else will fall into place as I work and do all these things. But it's almost like that adventure, and you treat that competition as an adventure to get out and away from the day to day. And that will translate and make you, stronger in all aspects of your life.
Bamboo banger to close us out. I think that's the pod. Like, subscribe, let us know what you'd like to hear about. And if you could, if you're a consistent listener, and we see you all and appreciate it, give us a review. Helps us spread and grow this thing, which is another systems and goal that we have for the year, just to reach more listeners. So thanks again. We'll back at you next week.